Hello friends, welcome back to another in my series of tutorials for new players in the console for 7 Days to Die. In this tutorial we're going to go over weapons. There's a lot of weapons in 7 Days to Die. Makeshift weapons, real good weapons, melee, ranged, all kinds of good weapons. So I'm going to show you the basics. So we start off in the game by making your standard axe. Now an axe can be used as a weapon, it's just not a great weapon. Every weapon, if you select it and look in your character's inventory area, it'll tell you its entity damage. Entity damage are things like zombies and dogs and bears and all the other stuff. So this is how much damage this particular axe does to an entity. Now, as your skill in using construction tools goes up, as the quality, for example, if I bring in a much nicer stone axe, there's a 470 quality one. Anti-damage is 8.7 versus this one, which is 2.8. So you can see that as you go up in skill in crafting your weapons, the damage that you can do with that said weapon goes up along with it. So keep that in mind when you're picking up weapons, because sometimes you'll come across a better quality. You'll find a better tier weapon with a lesser quality and actually is a step backward in actual total damage. For example, here's a stone axe, which is 470, does 8.7 entity damage. And one of the best melee weapons in the game is the spiked club. And this one is a 74, and it does 9.6, so actually it does more damage than the stone axe, but not by much. Even, for example, this iron reinforced club actually does pretty good, and this spike club does awesome damage. That's a really, really good one. So, but here, for example, 8.28 for that iron reinforced club, and 8.87 for that stone axe. So again, just because the weapon itself is a higher class doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be doing more damage. You also want to make sure you keep your tools repaired, and as you repair them, the quality on them will go down. So keep that in mind as well. So stone axe is your first item in the game. You're then prompted to craft a club, just standard wooden club. Wooden club, very simple recipe. It just needs wood. So just some wood, you bash it together, you make a club. Again, your standard club that you'll make early on in the game is going to do relatively little amounts of damage. So, for example, why did someone join my game? Let me fix that here. All right, so we can craft, a new wooden club, and it's going to be a much lower quality wooden club. Let's go ahead and craft one up. So I'm making a 138 now, which is 9.4 damage. So it's actually not a bad club at all. Does a lot more damage than that club. So as soon as you can, you want to not use your stone axe for melee. You want to move up to the wooden club, or if you get any scrap iron at all, you'll be able to make just 5 pieces of scrap iron and 5 wood. You'll be able to make an iron reinforced club, which does considerably more damage. And again, it's very easy to find scrap iron out in the world. You get scrap iron every single time, so that 10.6, that's much better than that one. So you get scrap iron from cans that you can smash down. You'll get scrap iron out of this rock. If you break a bunch of rock down, you get some scrap iron. You'll get more off of the resource rocks. Scrap iron is pretty prevalent in the world. Just find 5 pieces of it, and you can make that iron reinforced club, which is your first big step up. The next step up in clubs is the barbed club. Oh, hello, mister. And we'll go ahead and use this spike club on this guy. And the spike club is pretty much your best melee weapon in the game. There we go. Don't you try and sneak up on me, young lady. Alright, so that's the spike club. As you can see, it's pretty, even at a low level like I am right now, it does amazing damage. It does do blood damage against, I should say a bleed effect damage, but against zombies don't take bleed effect. So they will not be affected. More zombies, really? Alright, well we can show off these weapons, I guess. So zombies do not get a bleed effect, so only players do. So if you're doing PvP, the spike club is an excellent weapon because it will cause that bleed effect, and also against animals. So if you whack a pig with it or a deer with it, it'll run off bleeding and die. All right. So the spike club is your premium, but, and I'll explain this in a second, a lot of the weapons in the game are gated behind a schematic. So let's look first at our, so we have our iron reinforced club. Yep, got that. The next one up is the barbed club. So the barbed club requires forged iron. So that means you have to have a forge in first. Or there's a really rare chance of pulling forged iron from cars. But the odds of getting 4 pieces of forged iron before you get a forge up and running, pretty low. So most times this forged iron club is going to be your top tier club after you get a forge going, until you find the schematic for the spike club. So to get a schematic, you'll find these out in the world, and then you can basically just, if you select them in your inventory and use them, like, use your use action, which is generally the right trigger, that'll read it, and then you can now have that recipe unlocked to be able to make a spike club. Now, a spike club is a fairly expensive item. It again uses forged iron, but not much more. So it's only 1 more piece of forged iron, but the damage is considerably higher. So here, for example, this iron reinforced club is a 595, so it's a higher quality, does 16. This spike club does 27 damage. Plus it has that 50% chance of bleed effect, plus a 40% chance of blunt trauma. So it'll really stun zombies when you whack them with it. The iron reinforced club has a 20% chance of just the blunt trauma. Other melee weapons include, let's go ahead and get rid of that one, the bone shiv, one of the earlier weapons you will get. So the bone shiv, you'll find a bone off of zombies or off of animals. You sharpen it up and you've got yourself a little melee weapon, which does, let's take a look at the damage on it. It does 5 entity damage. So it is also, again, much better than the early on stone axe. But again, the range is really low, so be very careful using these. These are generally, you want one for harvesting. That's about it. Okay, the next one you can find out in the world is a hunting knife. And I'll put the machete down here as well. Yes, machetes. So a hunting knife, really nice as well. 16 damage on this one. Hunting knife generally will be much more damage than a shiv. It's a fast weapon as well. But again, fairly low range, so you want to be very careful using these against zombies. It's kind of a last resort to be using melee weapons against zombies anyway. The machete is a great one as well. It has a good amount of damage, so this is only a 3 quality against this 390 quality, but it only does 4 points less damage. So just imagine if you get a machete. Let's actually look here for a machete that is machete. So here's a purple machete, and just out of curiosity, this does 27 damage. So this damage and the spike club damage are roughly the same. So these are your top tier melee weapons right here. Now the machete has got a really good chance of chopping limbs off. So it's got a really good chance against the head shot of removing the head out of a zombie in one hit, which obviously is a good thing. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up for the melee weapon selection. Now you can, of course, use an axe, a pickaxe, other things like that as your go-to weapon. You can use a wrench. You can use a torch. Now, the torch is nice because it will set a zombie on fire. It's got about a lowest chance of, probably around a 25% chance, 30% chance of setting the zombie on fire. So you can just whack him with it. Does a little bit of damage. So if you look here at the damage on the torch, it does 6 damage. So not a whole lot. 10% chance of burning. Okay, 10%. So it's, I mean, if you've got nothing else to do, you can set them on fire. I mean, that's the chance. Now, for example, the iron fire axe, this does almost 13 points of damage on a high level. Pickaxes, same thing. You can get a decent amount, but they're made to be effective against blocks, not against zombies. So you do not want to use an axe as your primary melee weapon. It's also kind of slow. Oh, and one thing I did forget was a sledgehammer. So the sledgehammer is another weapon that is gated behind a schematic. Okay, so in order to make a sledgehammer, you can find these sometimes in working stiff tool chests. The other tools, like spike clubs and clubs, etc., you'll find on zombies. You'll find just in general loot. You'll find those scattered around. But the sledgehammer is pretty much once in a while on a lumberjack, snow zombie. But generally, you can find these in working stiff tool chests. But to make one yourself, you got to find the schematic, which you can then read, and now you can craft that. Now, sledgehammer is a very damaging weapon, so even at a low quality, this is doing 28 damage. So already it's doing more damage than a purple spike club. However, the drawback of using the sledgehammer is it requires practice because it is slow. So I would recommend, if you are going to use the sledgehammer, you need to learn how to use it. So you'll generally see a zombie, you'll start swinging as you come up to it, and then you'll pull back. You'll start and then get back. So you always want to start swinging before you actually contact. Just be prepared. It is not good if you're being swarmed. This is not the weapon for a swarm attack. All right, so now let's move on to ranged weapons. So the first ranged weapon you'll get is obviously your bow. So the bow is very straightforward. You'll hold down your fire button, pulls it back, and you can fire by letting go of your fire action. Pew! Bonk. Now you do not recollect your arrows. They are gone once they are fired. You can also change the arrow that you have selected. So when you start off, you're able to make stone arrows, which are made with stone, feathers, and sticks, wood. The next tier up is iron. You can make iron arrowheads. You can find iron arrowheads out in the wild. They'll be in loot drops. Zombies may carry them once in a while, and they can also be made in a forge. Once you've got a forge with an anvil going, you can make iron arrowheads. Then once you unlock the steel level of crafting in your forge, you can then make steel arrowheads. So to change those, you'll hold your reload button down, and that'll give you an option of all the different arrow types that you've got in your inventory. So I've got iron arrowheads, I've got stone arrowheads, I've got iron arrowheads, I have steel arrowheads, and last but not least, I have flaming arrowheads. Oh yes, flaming arrowheads, which will set a zombie on fire. Now, you can also gain skill in archery simply by shooting. So if you want to grind out your archery skill, just shoot some stuff, and you will slowly gain skill in archery. Same goes with your axe, your clubs, your anything else. If you use that tool and you do damage to something, you will gain in skill. So if you want to take a club and just bash the ground for days, you will raise your blunt weapons skill. All right. So I mentioned the flaming arrows. They are, of course, gated behind a recipe. We have the flaming arrow schematic, which you can find. It's a rare drop, but when you find it, you can craft it. And the recipe is a little expensive. Flaming arrows requires gunpowder, cloth, tallow, which is made from fat, and you have to cook it down in a cooking pot on a fire. So any animal fat, you cook it down in a cooking pot on the campfire, you get tallow out. So tallow, cloth, gunpowder, and steel arrows, so you need steel unlocked as well in your recipes, and then you can make these flaming arrows. And they are great because they set zombies on fire, 100% chance, and it is just lovely to watch them run around. Also, it's quite a bit of damage, so. All right, so the next level that you'll get to is the crossbow. Now, the crossbow is gated behind a schematic, so you will need to unlock that schematic first and foremost. Okay? You can find these. In fact, most of the schematics you can find at a Crack-A-Book store. It's one of these fancy stores that are in the game. And the Crack-A-Book store will have tons of bookcases, and you can loot them all. Most houses also have a bookcase that you can loot. So you want to find and loot every bookcase you can get. Now, if you have read a schematic already, let's go ahead and read this one. And let me go ahead and grab another crossbow schematic. There we go. And if I read that again, it'll now actually increase my weapons smithing skill. So I just become better at smithing weapons just reading the same skill book over and over again. So if you are finding extras, read them anyway, because you will gain your crafting skill in those areas. All right. Now the crossbow requires a few things to make. It's a little spendy, but it's usually by the time you find the schematic, you'll have these pieces in place. So the crossbow requires forged iron, just one piece though, leather and wood. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Leather you can you can harvest from sofas and cars, and then once you get the leather perk unlocked, you can also turn animal hides into leather. All right, so that is the crossbow. And the crossbow again has the same types of. It has bolts rather than arrows, but you've got stone bolts. You've got stone bolts. You've got iron bolts with iron arrowheads. You've got steel bolts with steel arrowheads, or bolt heads in this case. It uses the same bolt head, so the heads themselves, the actual arrowhead, is usable on arrows and bolts. Okay, so stone, iron, and steel. Obviously, less powerful, more powerful, most powerful if ever. And the best one that you can get on the crossbow is the exploding crossbow bolt, which is again gated behind a crossbow bolt schematic. So if you find this, you can read it, and now you can craft exploding crossbow bolts. So let's go ahead and look here for exploding crossbow bolts. They require a steel arrowhead, kind of like the fire arrows did, gunpowder, 25 of it, some duct tape to wrap that package of duct to it, some wood and feathers. So basically it's a steel arrow, a steel bolt, plus some gunpowder with some duct tape to attach it to that. Okay, so it's straightforward and it is really effective. So let's go ahead and fire one up here. I'm going to aim with my right trigger, pull, fire. Pull, fire. This thing is pretty strong. Ooh, yeah. So this does pretty good damage against zombies. It will do some decimation against zombies. It's also very good against groups of zombies. So I recommend it be your fun weapon for horde nights. All right, due to the length of this first section, we're going to go ahead and end our discussion of melee weapons here. Now again, melee weapons are great. They're a good resort if you're being swarmed by zombies, but again, ranged weapons are generally going to be your better guns, etc. So those are what you're going to want to use in any kind of major combat. But melee weapons are definitely effective, so get to know them, get to use them, get the timing down, and hit, duck, hit, and get away, hit, and get. All right, so if you have questions more about melee weapons, let me know in the comments below. I'll try to answer them best I can. Let me know your favorite melee weapon as well, and I will see you guys back here for the next episode covering ranged weapons, guns, etc. For now, it's been RongoTheBold. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.